Thomas N. Quinn III to say a few words.
Thank you very much. This is a very important issue that we deal with every day. It's an important issue to me in the District Attorney's Office. Our goal is to protect victims and their families from further violence, in particular holding people accountable who should be held accountable. We have developed, actually, the District Performance Attorney Sutter, and Mayor Sutter, has developed a specialized domestic violence unit that I am building on, so that we have prosecutors and victim witness advocates in each court who are dealing specifically with these cases, so we can provide more efficient services of prosecution to victims in these cases. This is an important month to bring awareness to domestic violence. One thing that strikes me is the effect that it has not only on the majority of women, I'm sure in a few cases, but we're talking about women being assaulted, primarily domestic violence, and their families and their young children, who once exposed to that, often revert to that or do that when they get older. So it's a serious issue. I want, as a leader of the District Attorney's Office, it is a priority to me to, again, prosecute, bring more awareness to this issue with the White Ribbon Campaign. I'd like to take a brief moment to acknowledge many victims of domestic violence who have been killed and injured during the last few years. It's certainly something that is very disturbing to me when a woman is hurt and violent and in some cases killed. So just want to think of them for a moment and do what we can, working in conjunction with the community, our office, to try to hold people accountable and make victims more safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Quinn. At this time, I would like to call on the Honorable Sam Sutter, Mayor of Fall River, to give the proclamation and to begin Domestic Violence Awareness Month for the Greater Fall River area.
This is a very solemn occasion because domestic violence is a major problem in this country, in our state, in our city. And I would like to applaud District Attorney Quinn for taking the idea that we came up with together, which was for a domestic violence unit, a specialized unit, and taking it to the next level, which he has done. He deserves our praise for that. It is inspiring for me, if I can just take a little personal detour here for a second, to see the faces of people that I used to work with closely and enjoy working with them because of their dedication. Brian Rose, Ashley Fendixson, Deb Almeida, Sandy Faraz, Alice Beauregard. I thought I saw Erin Aiello as well, but she seems to have disappeared, probably went back to court. But folks, just a brief thought before I read the proclamation. I remember vividly a conversation that I had with District Attorney Quinn and First Assistant Bill McCauley. I believe it was shortly after we were all sworn in together, and we were talking about the magnitude of the domestic violence problem. And I remember Mr. McCauley, who was the head of the domestic violence unit in Plymouth County before he went into private practice and then came over to Bristol County, talking about the way domestic violence ramifies as a consequence beyond just the victim. It's also the children that are in the home that witness this either on a singular occasion or, as so often happens, and very tragically happens time after time after time, the impact that has on the children. That's something to remember for all of us as we move into Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So it is with great solemnity and seriousness that I read this proclamation on behalf of the city of Fall River. That's what I'm supposed to do now, right? Whereas the crime of domestic violence is not confined to any specific group of people, but crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, health, and humanity. due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and/or abuse. And whereas important partnerships have been formed among criminal and juvenile justice agencies, healthcare providers, allied professionals, and victim services to assist victims of domestic violence and their families. And I note that many of these individuals have the representatives here today, the police, some of the domestic violence organizations, service providers. Whereas survivors should be able to find compassion, comfort, and health care they need through accessing medical and legal services, counseling, transitional housing, and other supportive services so they can escape the cycle of abuse. And whereas it is important to recognize the dedication of the individuals who provide services to victims of domestic violence and work to increase public understanding of this significant problem. Now, therefore, in recognition of the important work done by domestic violence programs, victim service providers, everyone involved, and the need to raise awareness for this important issue, I, Sam Sutter, as Mayor of the City of Fall River, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and reaffirm this city's commitment to ending domestic violence in our community. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor Sutter. I would now like to take a moment to recognize and validate the work of our Greater Fall River Domestic Violence Coalition. The coalition has existed since 1994, but has only been incorporated since about November 2005, which has given us the ability to provide education and awareness, in turn giving back to the community, which is part of our mission. I would like to call out the member agencies in order for them to receive the recognition that is so deserved. Star Women's Center, South Coastal Counties Legal Services, Bristol Elder Services, Fall River District Court Probation Department, Bristol County DA's Office, Child and Family Services, Department of Transitional Assistance, Citizens for Citizens Head Start, Fall River WIC Program, Family Service Association, Health First Family Care Center, Our Sisters Place, People Incorporated, St. Anne's Youth Trauma Program, United Neighbors of Fall River, the Women's Center South Coast Rape Crisis Program, our participating area police departments, Fall River, Somerset, and Swansea, and any agencies who have had representatives at meetings or other events. If I've forgotten you, I apologize. Our list, you can see, is very long and growing. Our gratitude does extend to everyone for their dedication, their commitment, and their tenacity in this fight against domestic violence. I would like now to call Dale Brown, Director of STAR's Women's Center. Ms. Brown has been the Director of the Women's Center for 23 years, has worked in the field for 39 years, and has played a significant role in recruiting the men in our area to take charge of the White Ribbon Campaign today.
Good afternoon. And my speech has been moved, so it's a minute. Okay. Deanne, I will get back at you for this. Okay. So there's an old expression that says, if it is to be, it's up to me. And that's a perfect, real, good opener for today as we begin Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It is perfect because in our greater Fall River area, in our communities, we are calling on each and every one of us to step up and be a part of the solution in ending domestic violence. It's not unusual at all that in our busy lives, with our hobbies, our families, our jobs, and other interests and responsibilities, that we focus on other things. Traditionally, though, the work of ending domestic violence has been with women's organizations and batterers intervention programs. And we have Dan Buckley with us today. Thank you, Dan, for being here. So we stand here year after year, we share statistics, and that's a necessary evil sometimes because statistics really drive our programming, our funding, our staffing, and all of that towards ending domestic violence. So we do have to quote a few statistics. Last year, for example, the Women's Center at STAR provided services to 952 individual women and men. On top of that, new position that we had for the civilian police advocate at the Fall River Police Station, provided services to 1,257 contacts. The services included court advocacy, restraining order services, harassment orders, intervention with human resource departments, hospitals, clinics, counseling, medical and legal advocacy, as well as I said, our new civilian advocate in the police department. Every September, the 51 statewide agencies identified by Jane Doe, which is our Massachusetts Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, participated in a national one-day census in this country. We take a snapshot of the services needed in any one particular day, and then we talk about what services were not met. On that day alone, just in the Commonwealth, 1,795 victims received some type of service in that one day, but yet 398 needs were unmet. So there's good news as well. We're witnessing innovative programming, collaboration, not just written in a grant that we're going to collaborate, but true programming, staffing collaborative efforts, both locally and statewide, mostly focusing on prevention and collaborations in the private sector, which is something new in the domestic violence movement. The issue of domestic violence is probably more understood today than at any other time in our history. Locally, South Coastal Legal Services, here also today, and STAR have been collaborating on a 3-year grant to lower the barriers for women and other victims who are seeking legal services. And those legal services include immigration, which is a huge issue in domestic violence cases, divorce and child custody and visitation. State Representative Alan Sylvia, who is also here today, secured $25,000 for us to help build capacity to provide comprehensive services to elder victims of domestic violence, which is certainly a trend in this city. Through a VAWA grant, which is a Violence Against Women Act grant, we were able to establish a position this year for a civilian police advocate who works closely with the Special Victims Unit of the Major Crimes Department and the Fall River Police Department. It's working very well. A multidisciplinary high-risk team convened by the Bristol County District Attorney's Office reviews serial battery cases in order to provide accountability for perpetrators of domestic violence. And finally, and this is the frosting on the cake, especially for you football fans, but for all of us, a recent announcement of a $1.5 million gift from the Robert Kraft Family Foundation and the New England Patriots Charitable Foundation. The gift is for Jane Doe, our coalition, and will support several initiatives to address sexual assault and domestic violence in the Commonwealth. The gift will specifically support the establishment of a new institute for safety and justice, and will provide comprehensive training and community building among our member programs and others in the field working to support survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. They will also be partnering with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office in a program called Game Change, a program to protect young people from relationship dating violence. So the game is indeed changing. It's not just women's centers and data programs engaging in the work. And as I said before at the beginning, if it is to be, it's up to me, and me is all of us. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you, Dale. Before hearing our keynote address, I would like to welcome some of our area police chiefs to say a few words as well. Chief Daniel S. Racine from the Fall River Police Department, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's a pleasure and privilege to be here today. I commend Dale Brown, Captain Cabral, Mayor Sutter, District Attorney Quinn for putting this together. I think this is critical, and this is something that needs to be addressed, and the spotlight needs to be on this issue, so thank you for doing this. Once I was asked to speak, I looked back at the FRPD stats. In 2012, a Fall River Police Department alone responded to 3,160 calls for domestic violence. 2013, 3,213. 2014, 3,274. And this year in 9 months, so far in 9 months, 2,887 calls for domestic violence. So that's over 12,000 calls over the last 3 years and 9 months for domestic violence. And I have to think how many people have been affected by those calls for domestic violence, in particular children, as the mayor mentioned. And I honestly think my training experience tells me that the impact on children is very, very serious and long-lasting. In fact, probably irreparable damage can be done when they see domestic violence in the home. And oftentimes they go on to repeat domestic violence in their own families eventually. So I think we as men and fathers must not only speak out against domestic violence and violence against women, but more importantly, be role models and teach our sons how to treat women with respect and dignity and appreciate them. And after all, these are our mothers, our sisters, our girlfriends, our wives, our loved ones. We certainly should appreciate and respect them. And my father was a blue-collar man, and a very intelligent man, well-educated. Yeah, I remember growing up, he would say, respect starts in the home, and respect starts with your mother because she gave you life. And I never forgot that. It stuck with me growing up, and I certainly teach my son, who's 10 years old, those words, and that is certainly taught in my family. And I think as men and fathers, we need to do that and realize how critical that is. So again, I want to thank you all for putting this together, and we respect and appreciate and are proud to be your partners. And I want you to know that 225 Fall River police officers wear that white band with pride and distinction over the next 30 days. So thank you.
I would like to now call Chief George M. McNeil from the Somerset Police Department.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be here to be an ambassador for the White Ribbon Campaign. I'm glad I was asked to speak because I have some things I'd like to say. We as role models must speak about domestic violence, sexual violence in the home. In my 29 years in this profession, I have seen the approach to domestic violence change dramatically, but one thing that hasn't changed enough is the fact that men do not speak out on the subject. Domestic violence historically has been viewed as a private matter that need not involve government or criminal justice intervention. Before the early 70s, police in the United States favored a hands-off approach to domestic violence calls, with arrest only used as a last resort. Research done in Minneapolis in the early 80s proved that arresting the alleged perpetrator in domestic violence cases was the best option. But I don't think we can arrest ourselves out of domestic violence. We need to work together to break the cycle of violence that is carried on from generation to generation. Breaking the cycle of violence will not be easy. Those who have been raised in a household where domestic and/or sexual violence was considered to be the norm must be educated, informed, and need to know that there is another way and that they do not need to perpetuate the cycle. We need to understand that domestic violence thrives when we are silent, but if we can take a stand to work together, we can end domestic violence. We all need to make others aware of this very important issue and to try and find solutions. By wearing these ribbons around our badges, we make a clear and loud statement to others that we stand together. Domestic violence affects us all. It harms our communities. It hurts the people we love the most. It is an affront to our basic decency, and it must end. We must advance the economic environment, financial literacy for domestic violence survivors. We must help educate survivors about safe technological practices and how batterers misuse technology to further abuse. We must empower domestic violence survivors to lead independent lives free from abuse. We must build up local statewide coalitions such as this one against domestic violence. All of us here must be role models for the younger males in our communities so that others know that domestic and sexual violence is not okay. We are here today to take the pledge to end domestic violence against women. I am happy to know that I am part of the change, as is the Somerset Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief McNeil. It is now time to present our keynote speaker. Our guest today is the coordinator of the Men's Initiative through Jane Doe, Inc., the State Domestic Violence Coalition. He is also the co-founder and coordinator of the Massachusetts White Ribbon Campaign. He has spent many years fighting domestic violence, teaching men and boys how to stand up and speak out, and showing us all that silence doesn't work. It is my pleasure to introduce Craig Norbert Bohm.
Thanks. Really appreciate it so much. I'm honored, distinctly honored, to be part of your community today. I'm only meeting some of you all for the first time. I'm just delighted to see a whole room full of people who want to talk about this and think about a solution as dramatic as it is to get men and boys to speak up and be proud about a solution that they've mostly been thinking about being part of the problem of. So it's a shift. It's an important shift, a shift that we have some creative work to be done about. So I work for Jane Doe, Inc., State Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. I have some slides, so I apologize, you all can't see the slides. So if you want to move over to see them, that would be fine with me. You want to shift over so you can see the slides, that would be terrific. It's about 15 minutes, my talk, so settle in and think together a little bit about these, to have something to do and time to step up, to recognize an invitation for participation. Many men quietly care. Most men quietly care about this, but they're not sure about other men's thoughts about what that means. Does that mean that they're weak or weaker than men who express themselves in a powerful way or a dominant way? That's the question. What are we celebrating in the frame of manhood? So we're asking, if you're a man for change, how are we reimagining manhood for you? How are we reimagining manhood for you? So this slide says a few appreciations. We have to appreciate the women who have gone before. Women invented this field. Survivors have insisted on no longer being part of this threat, no longer suffering this violence, have insisted on care, have created shelters, have created programs every day. The history of the organizations locally probably fit this model, that women who have gone before have established this campaign, and we honor their voices, we honor the survivor's voice and how we're doing this. There are also male survivors which have received a voice in the past few years, particularly in Massachusetts with the Catholic Church crisis about sexual abuse of boys in that context. 1 in 6 males are survivors of sexual assault by the time they're teenagers. That's a lot of men who have sexual assault history. There are also men who have domestic violence history. When we talk about we're here to stop men's violence against women, that's the primary problem, it's the biggest population problem. But use the place marker, violence against women, for also gender-based violence, violence in same-sex relationships, power control issues within the intimate space. That's what we're talking about. And it's an allegory that can fit in every relationship. But us men seem to do it well. And so we're here to talk about maleness and manhood as it relates to this problem. At least have a conversation about it and think about solutions. I appreciate the mentioning that you're ambassadors, that you're thinking of how you're going to carry this campaign. We have cards at the table and ribbons. The cards say that you're an ambassador to the campaign. You can also sign up online to be an ambassador to the campaign, which I hope all the males here find the time to do. So I want to thank the men who are here now for participating. This is the map of Massachusetts. We'll see circles on it. This is where our programs are. We are all over the map. Our local programs are doing emergency work every single day. The statistics were mentioned a few minutes ago. Hundreds a month, 10 to 20 a day in any locality. That this is a lot of work. They're perfecting intervention work. They're perfecting the emergency work. So how do we go beyond the emergency is a big question. How do we prevent this? What is prevention in our field? It's a big question. It's not fully answered. Let me talk a bit about some theory of prevention. I think some language is helpful, some ideas are helpful. And then I'm going to spend the majority of my talk showing you pictures of what people are doing all around the state just like this. I want you to feel inspired of things you might do through the month or further down the line that are similar. I would like to have you inspired by ideas. Many of us are inspired because we care about this, we're touched very personally. Someone in our lives is in trouble or in danger, a child perhaps. Some of us know in the family member who experienced domestic violence. Similarly, a family member may have experienced sexual assault. It's personal. And so I'm not asking anyone to reveal today or disclose your personal experience, but I know that some of you will be remembering your personal experience as we sit today. And I want to honor that time in this space and ask you and think that and invite you to take care of yourself as you can. But it's a real thing, and I want to be very sensitive to the needs of survivors. That's why it motivates many men to be in this. They know somebody. That's why he's here. That's why I'm here. I know somebody who's been hurt badly, and I don't want that to ever happen again. So here's the picture. This is a river. It's flowing downstream, left to right. In this river are people drowning. How do you take care of people drowning? Well, you rescue them in an emergency sense. That's what police officers do every day. We call 911. What the hospitals do. We pull people out of the river. And we're equipped for that, and we realize that we're overwhelmed by that. Can you meet the need? Often. Then there are people who are at risk. These are folks who are in the river, they haven't drowned yet, but they're in over their heads. So how do we help them? They may be kids at risk, they may be problems. We call that bystander engagement. Like you see people in your lives who are in trouble. How can you help those neighbors and friends and family members who are in some sort of trouble that you notice every day? We have a training, the most prominent teacher of which is the program out of Northeastern called Mentors in Violence Prevention, the MVP program. Who's familiar with MVP programs? I know some of you are familiar, some of you train in this region about it. So this is something that the CRAFT money is going to fund an expansion of in high schools around the state. Do more training for bystander intervention. If you see something, what are your two first primary things to do? Not participate, walk the other way. The other is to get right in the middle of it and say stop. Neither one of them are always a good outcome in a certain case. There turns out there are probably 5 other alternatives you can think of to be useful in a situation that you witness. So the MVP training has helped you think about, through a scenario-based education, well, if this happened, what would you do? If something else happened, what would you do there? What if you knew the person, they were in your family? What if they were a stranger on the bus? These are different circumstances in which you might act differently, respond differently, and have a different resource. So that's what the training does, helps you think about being more active and responsible bystanders so that our village is actually collaborative in promoting safety. That's the point, engaging the public. So that's its idea. That's called secondary prevention, at risk. Now there's something here at the very beginning is, that person hasn't been thrown in the river yet. They're not in the water yet. They're not drowning yet. They're not feeling wet. So in our case, what does that look like in sexual and domestic violence? Who is here? When are you here? This is an interesting question. Tony Porter is a speaker who you can find in the TED Talk that Tony Porter has done, and a gentleman who's very eloquent on this case. You might look it up in the TED Talks. He talks about his son, who when he's 8 years old or so sees a little girl on the playground, says, oh, she's cute, I'd like to be her friend. Then you take a few years later, he's now 18, the same thing happens, he says, oh, I'm going to hit that. What happened? What happened from when he was a child who knew something about connection and passion and caring and empathy to something up here was thinking about objectivity, a thing, an object of pleasure. What happened? What are those years? Those 10 years? Who represents? Who mentors? Who is the role model that they're following along? So this is our challenge. This is what happened here. We want this process to go differently. You'd like this child to stay whole. Hang on to those connections, not lose them. Could we support that? Would we celebrate him to be that kind of a boy? Or do we call him less than a man? So that's the challenge, I think. So I'm now speaking about something called social norms. What do we want to be as strength? What do we want to be as adult men? What is our social norm? What are we living up to? Who are our heroes? So a big part of our norms of manhood are powerful. We learn to fight, we learn to stand up to ourselves, we learn to do things such take over and be in charge. And if we're always in charge, everyone's serving us, and to expect service. If you work with batters, who's here does work with intervention with offenders of domestic violence? Any of you here? Expectation of service. Does that ring a bell? Like you do for me. You do for me. That's what you're here for. So he has to get over that. How does he get over that? He needs other men saying, yeah, that's a problem we have. We got to get over that. We got to somehow get over that. That's not an easy step. It's a character thing he learned his entire life. So how do you change that? Are we ready for a recovery community for ex-offenders of domestic violence? Are you ready to celebrate his change? I don't think we are quite yet. We'd like to get there, but we're not quite there. We still like to pretend he just is done. We're done with him. That's what we'd rather think. So I'm not sure where the graduates in your program are going, but they probably feel a little out of water. So I think there are values of manhood that are part of the solution. And that solution piece is what I want to emphasize. So there's a spectrum of readiness. There are men who are offenders we just mentioned, who are the problem of our intervention and emergency services. We have men and boys who aren't paying any attention at all because it's not on their radar and it's not their problem. But then there are hundreds and thousands of men who would help if asked. That's the purpose of our campaign, is get men who want to help to have something to do. And then to support active leaders like myself and others who are ready to step up and be ambassadors for the campaign. That's my job, is to connect up with ambassadors. So we want to reach every adult male who's ready to help with a specific request that's easy to accomplish. That's our campaign. That's the White Ribbon Day campaign. Take this pledge with me. Think about it and care. Express your caring. So just imagine what we might be able to do with a campaign like this. Visible action, many voices, learning happens through doing. You can be who you are, where you are. Let's celebrate the kind of men that can create solutions to this problem. So we found the White Ribbon Campaign years ago. It's now 24 years. It was launched 24 years ago in Canada. It's in 60 countries, millions of signatures. One of the strongest nationwide campaigns is in Australia. And they have a wonderful campaign they call it, I Swear. That's their pledge, I swear, and they use ambassadors and affiliates like we do. So this is a terrific thing. Once a year in Massachusetts, we meet at the State House, and we have a celebration that the governor precedes and gives the proclamation every year. It's a wonderful celebration. We hope you send a delegation to come to the State House this year, Thursday, March 3rd, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. These cards are in the front for you to take today. Please take 2 extra cards and give them to men you see today and ask them to be part of the solution. You can give them a ribbon with it. I think it's a great step to take just today. So let me tell you a few things about the campaign. So this is what the governor's proclamation looks like. Am I speaking too quickly? It's a wonderful audience to be in a large crowd, to thinking about this problem, because we need to be connected to feel strong. Groups, we've learned, are one of the strongest ways to make this work. These groups are very different. You can't see it as well because it's not very bright. But this is a Harley Club. They're all wearing their colors. This is a youth team, after-school club. And this is a prep school's track team. So these are groups of boys and men who are working together on a project. They took the pledge, they're going to be part of the solution, they're going to have a value that supports this purpose. We like to be big and bold and proud. We have this banner. I understand you have a space here in the City Hall, we might hang this, I don't know. But it's a 3-story banner. The State House isn't hanging banners anymore. But we have this, and it's a wonderful expression of purpose. This is happening all over the Commonwealth. Towns, schools, churches, businesses, law enforcement, healthcare institutions are all doing proclamation events as you are today. This is a wonderful proclamation event. This is a billboard that was done in Gloucester that says, "Strong men don't bully," and 500 men each contributed a couple of bucks to pay for it. They portrayed it in up around town in their traffic circle for about a couple of months. And they have a parade in Gloucester called the Horribles Parade. It's a July 4th parade. 10,000 people walk in it. Lots of all the fire departments from the region go to it. The police walk in it. I don't know if you've seen it before. July 4th parades are this kind of a celebration. They enter this as the float and get a couple other men to walk with it. To represent this is the kind of men we are. The men step off saying, "I'm not sure this is a good idea." And at the end, they're very proud of how people applauded their purpose. This is entering a banner in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Lawrence. It's a youth team. This is a sports team captains in the town of Bedford. They have something called Bedford Day. Do you all have a day where you close down, do a parade down the city of town and do a fair perhaps, maybe information tables, food? Well, Bedford does that. They call it Bedford Day. They have a parade, and this year the team captains for the high school sports team carried a white ribbon banner, signing banner, in the parade and had their teams sign it all day long. They've done this ever since, and they have many banners now full of kids' names. And it's all over their lunchroom. This is City of Springfield Basketball Hall of Fame. This is a law enforcement proclamation event that was done for the City of Springfield, much like today. Similar event for the region around Worcester, the Central Mass region. This is the 5 colleges put together. They sent delegations, and they each brought banners and posters that each college had done. So there are hundreds and hundreds of men's and boys' names on these banners that they put around the room. Boston City Council, similarly, it's broadcast on local television throughout the city. Town of Waltham, similarly. Cities and towns know how to do proclamations. It's something we do. The paper reports on it, and then the public sees that men care. This is the point of the campaign level here, is you want to be known and visible. It's a visible action. City of Cambridge is very impressive to me because they pride themselves on collaboration, the collaborative style. And so what they've been doing is they've been getting their high school and their health department and their various clubs all together at the same time to do a white ribbon campaign. They started competing on their posters. They're signing posters. The police did a signing poster. Then the fire department did a signing poster. The fire department saw the police had more names on theirs. The fire department got out in the street and started getting them signed by the public. So they started competing about how many names. So competition's not a bad value. It can work. But it was a lot of fun for them, and they're looking forward to doing more this year. This is a youth club in Haverhill. They did their own signing banner in 2009. You can do this kind of privately within a cultural community. This is the Massachusetts Alliance of Portuguese Speakers. Their staff does a pledge, and then they operate a pledge process throughout their community. One of their events is a soccer game. In Lowell, the Portuguese community love soccer, and they have many teams. And so the teams had a tournament, and they stopped and talked about this issue and promised to be part of the solution together. So I thought it was a terrific thing to include in a sports process. So that's what MAPS did that year. They can get into places of worship. This Sunday, they asked all the boys to come forward and sign a banner. This is a signing poster, which you can print out from our website. A big piece of the solution is how dads parent and engaging and celebrating fathers. This is a picnic, a family picnic of dads and their families, and the picnic stopped in the middle, and all the men are brought forward to take this pledge together and say we'll be part of the solution. We are committing to safe and nonviolent homes. They're all learning. They're all in. This particular picnic is run by a group of fathers' parenting education classes called Responsible Fatherhood out of the Nurturing Family Center in Boston. But they've been doing it they've done this 8 years in a row and done the pledge every single picnic. So it's part of the value together to be this kind of a man. This is Spanish American Center in Leominster. So they did a fiesta that was themed white ribbon. So you can see how it goes. You do it where you can. You do it how it fits. You do it where it makes sense, where people come together and are connecting with the way they would pledge how to be together. So it's a sense of creating a routine where you give men and boys who care about this an opportunity to step up and say so. That's the point. This is Walk a Mile. You probably can't see, but if you look up on the internet, something called Walk a Mile in her shoes, you ask men to wear high heels and walk a mile. It's very theatrical. You get the cross-dressing community involved. You make it very celebrational. But if you look closely, you'll see the red pumps in this football player. It can be hilarious. He's going to be carrying a bucket saying, you watch me do this, give me a couple bucks. Then they donate it to the local women's center called the Elizabeth Freeman Center is doing this, and our member program on Nantucket Safe Place is also doing this. So it's theatrical, it's a lot of fun, fits. This particular location is a town festival. They do the walk through the festival. So how are we on time?
We're good.
We're good? A few more minutes and then we finish up?
Yeah.
All right, good. I just want to let you know this is a worldwide movement, that folks around the world are joining this. On the internet, you would look up menengage.org, menengage.org. MEnEngage is an international project that's supporting this kind of work. I'm helping with their North American chapter, but there's a Central American chapter, an Islands chapter, a South Asian chapter, a European chapter, a South African chapter, a South American chapter. And so around the world, people are getting together like this to celebrate. This is a group here in Springfield, Massachusetts called Men of Color Alliance. These African American men are getting together to promote their personal health. And part of health is peace and nonviolence. This is in New York City, celebrating fathers. 10,000 fathers take the pledge on Father's Day. This is Barack Obama signing the My Brother's Keeper, which is a mentorship project for young African American men by adult African American men. This is an international Latino project for reaching out to Latino men internationally to say, I invite you, break the chain of violence at home. Te invito. This is South Asian called Ring the Bell. This is hugely popular in South Asia, particularly India, and it means ring the neighbor's bell. If you hear something, ring the bell, involve yourself. Say you care, you notice, ask for a cup of sugar, ask for some milk, say that you're there, ring the neighbor's bell, be involved, don't let it go on. That's what it means. It says 1 million men, 1 million promises. Very inspired campaign in South Asia. This is South Africa, One Man Can campaign, very similar to the White Ribbon Day campaign. This is in Liberia. My strength is not the hurting. There's a wonderful pro-consent campaign that says, consent is the only way to be in a relationship. You don't force. If you force, it's no longer real, it's no longer safe, it's no longer good. This is my strength is not for hurting. It's a pro-consent campaign. And again, the International Men Care Global Fatherhood Campaign promotes, as I've been talking about, the idea of safe fatherhood and connected fatherhood. There's a wonderful exercise you can do in classes called the man box. Who's done the man box exercise in class? Any of you? A couple of you have, so you know what I'm talking about? You draw a box and you say, real man. Write all the things that a real man is. Then you say, and how do you police that box? When you step out of the box, what happens to you? If you're not that real man, what are you instead? You're called names, really. This is what happens on playgrounds, middle school playgrounds, and high school playgrounds. But then you say, a father. Then you have this challenge that fathers are outside the box, naturally. That their nurturing side is promoted. And they're feeling a bit of a contradiction about, are they good men to be good fathers? Fathers are asking that question. Of course, our answer is a resounding yes. That's what the celebration is for. So, I'd like to conclude by saying thank you. I appreciate your time, and I hope you think more about how to do this campaign. Please join us, ambassadors. I welcome you. I look forward to seeing you again. So thank you very, very much. All right, so I've been given the pleasure of leading the White Ribbon Day Pledge here. So would all the men come forward in front of me, please? All the males who are here and stand up and form a group that we can, as a photograph.